therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaoh? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Or the simple answer after all? You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not.
Have you guys ever heard of Dr. Peter McCulloch?
Maybe the name sounds familiar or looks familiar in my brain.
Yeah. He's been on Joe Rogan a few times. He was on American Drinking Bros podcast. He's been on many things, and I think he's also been on Tim Pool. Now, what happened was he's talked about this whole idea of what's been going on Rogan the last few weeks or so regarding this whole what do they call it? The grand psychosis or whatever it is.
Mass formation psychosis, which according to fact checkers, it does not exist.
Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, the term mass formation psychosis trended over the weekend with so many searches it broke the internet. When people went to search for the term on Google, a couple of strange things happened. Some people saw this odd disclaimer from Google saying the results were changing quickly and that it would take time for results to be added by reliable sources. What does this even mean? I thought when you Googled something, it would bring up sites relating to the topic. Why would Google need time to add results by quote unquote reliable sources? Sounds like they're censoring search results. Well, a few hours later, when people searched for the term, a bunch of sites began to pop up claiming it was a new far-right buzzword or one attributed to anti-vaxxers. Well, it's very difficult to find any information using Google, so I had to turn to DuckDuckGo in order to find any relevant information. So what is mass formation psychosis? Well, the term came recently from the Joe Rogan Dr. Robert Malone interview that aired this past Friday, but was also heard and explained in more detail during Dr. Peter McCullough's interview with Rogan.
We're in what's called a mass formation psychosis. This is very important. I give credit to Dr. Matthias Desmet in the University of Ghent in Belgium, and recently Dr. Mark McDonald, psychiatrist from LA. Mark McDonald's got a new book out, The United States of Fear, describing how the mass psychosis developed. What your listeners need to know is a mass psychosis is when there is a groupthink that develops that's so strong that it leads to something horrific. And the examples are these mass suicides that occur in these religious cults. The example is Nazi Germany, when people walk into gas chambers and were gassed. These horrific things. And four elements here. It's very important, Joe. First, there must be a period of prolonged isolation, lockdowns. Number two, there must be a withdrawal of things taken away from people that they used to enjoy. That's happened. Number three, there must be constant, incessant, free-floating anxiety. All this news cycle, all the deaths and the hospitalizations, more variant mutant strains, everything, people becoming scared over and over again. And the last thing, number four, the capper. The capper is there must be a single solution offered by an entity in authority. And in this case is clear. Worldwide, the solution was vaccination. Everybody must take the vaccination. It's not a U.S. program. It's not a European program. It's everywhere. And you know what, Joe? It doesn't matter what vaccine it is. It could be ChinaVac, CoronaVac. It could be Novavax. It could be Pfizer, Moderna, J&J. It's interesting that it doesn't even matter what vaccine it is. It's just take a vaccine, take any vaccine. And so what mass psychosis says is, number four, the solution, there's no limit to the absurdity of the solution.
So Dr. McCullough attributes the idea to Dr. Matthias Desmet, a professor of clinical psychology at Ghent University in Belgium, one of the top universities in the world. The four conditions that lead up to mass formation psychosis result in people who are radically intolerant and people who are irrational in their solutions. So in regards to this pandemic, we're seeing this intolerance of the unvaccinated, where many people who consider themselves very open-minded or even quote-unquote woke are saying things they believe, are saying that they believe the unvaccinated should be be removed from society in some way. So the most common way to remove the unvaccinated so far has been through requiring vaccine passports to enter restaurants, bars, movie theaters, malls, and other venues, requiring vaccine passports to work or even travel. So this is all done in an attempt to not only encourage people to get vaccinated, but also to reduce risk, which people believe is attributable to the unvaccinated. So there are a lot of people in society right now who I would consider to be radically intolerant of unvaccinated people and will go to great lengths to stay away from them. And many people, like myself, believe their solutions are irrational. The virus seems to be spreading through vaccinated and unvaccinated populations alike, so segregating based on vaccination status doesn't make any sense to me. But let's talk about the 4 conditions that lead up to this point and other examples throughout history. The first condition is some sort of social isolation. So the social isolation can be a group that is isolated from society, like cults living out in the middle of nowhere, groups that are isolated from each other through segregation or apartheid, or groups within a society that don't intermingle, like cultural, ethnic, or religiously different groups. So the first condition is some sort of social isolation from others. Now, lockdowns and not having any social interaction with one another could also count in this category. The second condition is some sort of despair, loss of enjoyment, perceived negative change in lifestyle. Obviously, this entire pandemic has created a massive loss of enjoyment and severely shifted lifestyles for many. In the example of a religious cult, they think this earth life is undesirable and blame infidels or sinners or even just the human condition. In the example of segregated societies or societies that persecute different people, be they a different race, ethnicity, religion, or in the case of this pandemic, medically different, people feel a loss of something in their lives and blame these others for that loss. But basically, the second condition is life isn't so great and these others are to blame. The third condition is being in a constant state of fear, anxiety, or anger. And I think this one speaks for itself. When a person is in a constant state of fear or anxiety, they'll do anything to relieve that fear and anxiety. And the fourth condition is a leader or group of leaders who come along and say they have the solution to the fear and anxiety and can make things better. They offer a solution and the people become fixated and follow through with that solution, be it mass suicide, apartheid, genocide, forced religious conversions. These are the most extreme, but they're probably smaller, less obvious examples. I would say mass incarcerations of Black men in America is probably another example of this. Blacks and whites stayed largely segregated within society. There was a perceived erosion of safety in the community. Fear, anxiety, and anger resulted. And the leadership, Clinton and Biden in this case, came along with the solution of locking people up.
Correct. And so he talks about that, and then he goes on further, but he actually talks about how you have to organize this sort of thing. And he said anything on this worldwide scale, this mass scale, does not happen within the space of 1 year to get operational. And he goes further. He says that for something like this to take place, it takes about a decade to plan. It takes about a decade of planning. He said, how could you get all the economies in the world doing the exact same thing, doing the exact same time, working together? How could you get big tech and media working together exact same time like this, putting out the same narrative? And lastly, he said, how can you get all the pharmaceutical companies working together? He said those 3 levels all working together in such a synchronized way with the exact same message. He said normally when something happens in one country, it doesn't get replicated exactly in other countries. This has been so too coordinated. And he said there is no way, if you look at the hypothesis of everything, there is no way that all of this could have been done within the space of 1 year. He said 5 years minimum, 10 years maximum.
But then you have Sweden. It's like, it feels like Sweden is too small to be invited into the club or something. They didn't get the memo. Because it
reminds me of World War II, Carl.
Yeah.
You know, you guys stay neutral. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it was a shame, World War II, but still, I think it was the right thing to do by the government because they took away all the guns.
Yeah.
If you disarm a people, you damn well make them like stay out of the war. If you break it, you fix it. So whatever cowardness like stains Sweden from that time, it's on that government. because
pretty much they're doing almost the same thing today, aren't they? They're kind of they're running their own path. They've remained open, done everything. So they're throughout all the past 2 years, they're doing their own thing, marking their own territory now.
According to our, I wouldn't say our Fauci, but because this guy is kind of the anti-Fauci, he could have been a little stronger, but he's very far from Fauci, at least. According to him, they had a meeting with all the other health, department guys in Europe when this broke out, and everyone was on the same page as Sweden, but the others went the other way and Sweden just kept going.
So the question is, do we think we're living in a mass formation psychosis under Fauci's leadership, where the only solution is vaccination and only vaccination will save us from this pandemic? Are people following nonsensical guidance blindly? Well, I want to play this clip for you of Fauci on CNN's State of the Union. Tell me if this guidance makes sense.
How should vaccinated and boosted people behave? Can they go into a restaurant, eat safely indoors right now?
When you're having such I call it a tsunami of infections, Dana, we are seeing people who are vaccinated and boosted who are getting breakthrough infections. So when you're in a situation where you have so many infections going out, the thing that you want to say is that if you want to do things like that, better do them in a setting where you know the people around you are vaccinated and boosted.
So Fauci says fully vaccinated people are getting the virus, so only be around fully vaccinated people. Rather than push back on this nonsense, Dana Bash just goes along with it. Doesn't this seem like an example of what could be considered mass formation psychosis? So I'll ask you guys, a lot of this stuff is just no longer really making sense. We're still following Fauci's guidance. I'm kind of wondering why.
Now we start to do stuff that is like, hey, we're almost out of this. Why do you start now? It's like when people finally start to, see that maybe what we did wasn't so stupid, then we take after the others. And that is above my understanding.
Well, thankfully, like here in America, we call it the Florida Freedom Zone because it's literally at this point, one of the last places on earth that is like how society used to be, at least on a state level. And they're just living their life normal. Now, down south in general, it's like that. You have little pockets here and there, in most places in America, it's has been normal for a long time, other than big events get canceled or stuff like that, which is out of our control when they come in. But for the most part, everything has gone on normal. It's just, there is still a few seeds of freedom left in the world, and it only takes one seed to grow a big tree.
Yeah,
that sounded very wise.
A big ass tree.
Yeah.
So how about South Dakota then? Did they fold?
Noam Christie, she folded in a lot of other ways, not necessarily on the COVID stuff, but she was the darling of the conservative movement until she folded to the transgenders. And so she's done now. And that was a really stupid decision.
But they never shut down, did they?
No.
They were Florida long before Florida.
Yes, they never did shut
nobody
down.
Cares because it's not down south in the
because it's South Dakota. Nobody gives a crap, you know. So,
but they didn't. They just stayed the course, right?
They did. Yes. Yeah, they did.
But Florida is a little more glamorous.
Yeah, because everybody on Earth goes to Florida. People from other countries, when they come to America, they go to 3 places. They go to California, New York, or Florida.
Even people from New York. AOC.
So did AOC.
That's right. Yeah. She had a great vacation down there, is what it looks like, and good for her. That's how you should be able to go on vacation and actually sit on a beach and not wear a muzzle, because that's all it is. It's not doesn't do anything. But so thankfully we
Yeah.
have that. There's a few places here and there, like I said, Sweden. It is a shame that they're kind of putting stuff in now, but
well,
it might be a little bit easier for them to get out of it too, because they didn't dive in the deep end. They've only put a foot in the pool, you know. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's still, I have lived pretty normal through all of this. There's a little keep your distance and whatever. Really, people in Sweden want to keep the distance anyway.
yeah.
The thing, the only reason we stand close in line is that we don't want people to cut in the line.
Yeah.
But if there's a rule that is like a meter or 1.5, we're totally okay with that, because that's where we want to stand. the only reason we squeeze together is that people should understand that we stand in line and don't just walk in right in front of us.
Social distancing before it was cool.
Yeah. It's like they say it's your comfort zone depends on how populated your country is.
Yeah.
So regularly in Sweden, it's like 1.5 meter. That's actually the comfort zone. And if you go down to like Italy, it's like 1 meter. You go to Tokyo, it's 0.5 meter. You go up to the north of Sweden, it's 4 meters. They just stand on one each side of the street and hello.
And then if you go over the border to Finland, they keep everyone away.
Well, speaking of a bunch of people packed tightly together, we just recently had the anniversary of Insurrection Day. As you know, so happy Insurrection Day. And what I want to do here again, well, I really hope all this screen sharing doesn't mess up the recording. That would really suck. What did everyone has been screaming from the hilltops for the last couple of months about when they find, Revolver.news and stuff like that, talking about, what happened on January 6th and whether there was federal involvement. And let me make sure I have the sound. Sharing sound is on. So what do we have here? Let's see.
I want to turn to the FBI. How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants actively participate in the events of January 6th? Yes or no?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Did any FBI agents?
There you go. What was a week ago a conspiracy theory is now in the halls of Congress, and they cannot answer. Because if they could answer, they could at least plausibly deny it, but they can't even plausibly deny it.
Yeah, if the answer was no, they could answer. That's just
yeah. There comes a point when there's so much evidence right in front of everybody's face that you can't just keep lying about it. If there's no evidence, that's what they do. I mean, that's what humans do. You lie when you think no one will find out, but as soon as everybody finds out, that you're done for. So it'd be interesting to see it'll probably get swept under the rug and never talked about again, like everything else.
You're right. And you look at the actual day when it happened, and even 1 year ago, directly after it happened, all the footage that was coming out, everyone kept on commenting on all of the people within the crowd that were saying, oh, go through this door, go through that room, go through this, go through that. And there was about 5 or 6 men who kept doing that over and over again. You're telling me, according to your own logic, those people went inside? Are you telling me that they weren't feds? Come on. Yeah. And, they can't hide from that.
Well, it's like you were talking about with the economies and everything that's gone on over the last year. You can't have that many levels of things all coordinated by coincidence.
Yeah.
Bannon on War Room has that thing up behind him that says there's no coincidence, there's no conspiracies, but there's also no coincidences. And I actually really like that saying a lot.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean,
and And I think one thing that came out of all of that as well was that, you know, if it was, you know, pre-set up and pre-planned, okay, one thing that was really seemed really off on the day that came out afterwards was when they were all bunkering down, you know, the idea that these people who were in amongst the crowd that were pushing people forward, even in amongst that group, there were just people. There was one guy in particular that now is the fool guy that they're going to push everything onto. They need that one fool guy because in amongst that crowd, there was heaps of people that were psyching the crowd up to go forward. Now, if that was any other thing, that's like someone that, to me in my mind, that's like looking at a mosh pit. You know, you've always got that one guy when the breakdown's about to hit, he's working the crowd. You know, before you know, someone hits the China bell. You know, and and then he's that one guy. That's what those guys were on that day, and he pretty much came out and in that Revolver article, and now they're looking at that one guy to be the fool guy. You know, because obviously the left got found out, the feds got found out, so now they need someone to blame it all on, so that they can say, oh, look, it was him, he was part of the Trump crew. No, it's not.
Yeah, it's exactly what they did in Michigan, where you know, you had this supposed conspiracy to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer,
yes.
the wicked witch of the North, and then it comes out that more than half the people involved were feds. Like, if they would have never, they're the ones that started it. These people probably had no intention of ever doing anything like that, but they pushed them just enough to get the ball rolling.
From what I've heard, they asked Pelosi earlier today, shouldn't we reinforce and get more people? And she said no. I wonder why.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they do.
Freedom.
I shall not want for nothing. He makes me lie down in the green pasture. He greases up my
I know you're out there.
Because those
He gives me
voices
kung
don't
fu
feel
in the
for
face
the
of my
rest
enemy.
You and I
know that you're afraid.
and do not believe that life
You're afraid
is
of
so
us.
dear and peace so sweet.
You're
that we
afraid of
purchase
change.
the price of change.
I don't know the future.